Morning, Justice Warriors. I am early. Oh my goodness. I'm a whole minute early, or probably not a whole minute. I'm a few seconds early. I apologize for that. So yeah, I was just excited to get on. I always am. It's just that, a lot of times I can't find my pen, or I need more water, or the lighting is all crazy. How is the lighting? Is it okay? Um, I hope it's good. I want to just jump right in. So thank you so much for being here, Sherry and Squirrely Burger, and hoping for answers. Good morning, everyone. Sherry was here a half an hour ago saying good morning. I hope you had a good night. I did. Sleeping is always good. And yeah, sometimes it's interrupted, and it was not interrupted. So that's awesome. Hey, Pam K. So, as you guys know, in my process here, and I just want to say this is a creative process. I did not know that until I started doing this. And the coolest thing about it, in my experience, is that you're really finding your voice. So, the things that I say and I share are mine, genuinely mine. I love including other people's ideas and giving credit every single time I can. So please forgive me if I ever seem to not give credit to someone. Call me out. I've said it again and again, and it's not because it's happened, it's because I want to prevent it from happening, please. So yeah, it's pretty phenomenal that I'll do a show and then I'll go find a show that somebody did like right around the same time. So I don't think either one of us were like getting each other's ideas. It's just that, we're both thinking along the same lines. And sometimes it's way more than two of us. So, sometimes it probably is one person's idea, but that's the whole thing with like the crowdsourcing. It's like you're all working together synergistically. And that's what we're doing here. This is why I love the lives. So everything I say is simply my opinion. It's simply for the sake of starting a conversation, hoping to open up a discussion, and I am hoping to learn. I do not know that much. I really don't. Um, I try to know things, and I try to speak things, and sometimes things come out wrong. I'll use the wrong word, I'll say the word wrong, or I have my wires crossed, or I read an article that had their wires crossed. I just can't tell you guys, we can't believe everything we read. We know that. We've all been raised that way. We certainly can't believe everything we see on YouTube. That's for sure. And on Google. Again, I'm going to repeat something I said yesterday. But wait, did I finish my disclaimer? That I make my videos specifically for YouTube, and YouTube is an entertainment platform. So I really find it imperative to cover that part, just to be, covering all the bases. So yesterday I was talking about an article that I saw about Dylan Mortensen that said she was 21. And I found several articles that say she's 21. And I haven't found anything with her birthday. But as we all know, we've all been hearing all along that she's 19. So I'm just curious. I'm curious. It's sort of like a Sammy Smith. Is she 18? Is she 23? Is she 24? All over again. Yeah, it's hard to tell the age of young women at that. When they're 19, they often look like they could be 30 or they could be 17, right? So I'm very curious if her age is accurate. I did find out that her father is not the prosecuting attorney anywhere, as far as I know. It seems that it's her dad's brother. So if it is her dad's brother, if it's her uncle that's the prosecuting attorney, a county or two over, it really doesn't change very much, in my opinion. If she's got an uncle in a position like that, he's going to fight for her pretty much as fiercely as her father might, in my opinion. So I just want to clarify that. I still don't know the precision of her mother's employment. If anybody knows if her mom works at Idaho University or not. It was so funny. One of the articles that I looked at when I was trying to find like a Wikipedia on her, it said, that it had her parents' names and it had her birth date and it had all the stuff, which it didn't have. For her parents, it said Mr. Mortensen and Mrs. Mortensen. And I just thought that was hilarious. So I know I have their names in my notes, and there was a few other names that I have too. Yesterday, I was speaking about the Moscow Police Department captain, and I didn't look it up to double check, but I'm pretty sure, is it Robert Leonard, the Moscow Police Department captain? If anybody wants to Google that real quick so I don't have to, because I did actually come up with it out of my big old brain, like, right after the show. I was like, oh, yeah, I remember now. But the thing about the captain is that he looks so much like the police chief. Like, they have the same stature. They're about the same age. They both have the white goatees. That as much as I think that still shot of the back of the corner club looks like the police chief, it could be anybody. There's a lot of dudes that look like that have that stature, and it could even be the captain. But to me, it really looks so much like what's his name? Mr. Police Chief James Fry. And then the way he's hanging his thumbs out of his pockets, or if he's holding on to a holster, whatever it is like a match. One of the photographs that I put him, Chief James Fry, side by side with the man without the face, they were standing the same. Their shoulders had like the same angle. Like my shoulders are pretty straight. His were kind of angled a little bit, not too much. But also width of the shoulders. Those are all things that you got to look for. Width of the neck. You know, there's a lot of details that we can pay attention to. I was trying to pay attention to his ears, but in The Man Without a Face, they really obscured his ears, which I find odd. So let's see. Oh, Squirrely Burger says, love the thumbnail. Me too. I've been having so much fun with these thumbnails. I need like a refreshment. Like, I love my true crime, but it does get a little bit much sometimes, doesn't it, you guys? Like, I love it, and I feel like I never want a break. And then like last night, I was like, man, I need a break. But hopefully sleeping was my break. So yeah, I was on SIFA's live last night about Charles Manson, and was Googling while I was watching, and I had no idea that Charles Manson had 3 sons. 2 of them were named Charles Manson. Charles Manson Jr. Unalived himself in his mid to late 30s in the 90s. And then Charles, what was it? Lucifer Manson? I'm pretty sure it was Charles Lucifer Manson. Am I right? I typed it into the chat last night. I'm not going to Google it, and I didn't write it down. Anyway, I was like, whoa, I think that guy's like 62. And then there was another one, Valentine Michael Manson, and I think he was in his 50s now. So Charles Lucifer Manson changed his name to J. Charles. Because he didn't want to have the affiliation. So there's like little Manson grandbabies out there. I was just like, holy smokes. Can you imagine having that legacy in your family? Like, yeah, my great granddad, he's a little cray-cray. Huh. Anyway, please hit that like button, share, and subscribe if you feel so moved. Sifa, did you Google it? Because you're saying Luther, and I was thinking Luther too, but I'm thinking that when I looked it up, just try to Google it if you have a chance. Oh, Roger Lanier. Dude, I just love your fact checking. Thank you so much, Sifa. Roger, I'll write that down. See how close I was? I'm so proud of myself because I used to be so awful with names. I was like happy if I got the first letter right. That's what you said last night. Okay, I'll Google one sec. Yeah, I was tired, and I wasn't like, I wasn't feeling like I was on a fact check mission. I was on a discovery mission because these were things I never ever even thought about. So yeah, whether it's Luther or Lucifer, and just the fact that he named 2 of his kids Charles Manson is kind of like George Foreman named 5 of his sons, George Foreman, you know, little narcissism, right? A little narcissism goes a long way. So thanks so much for being here, you guys. It looks like we have a nice full house. I have so much to talk about. Like, I'm just amazed how much I have to talk about twice a day. Like, I'm not even trying. I mean, I try a little, of course, but like the last thing I'm gonna do and watch me jinx myself, and then this afternoon I'll be like, I don't know what to talk about. The last thing I'm going to do is run out of material because this stuff is so crazy. So, yesterday, it wasn't until the afternoon live, you guys, where I had this epiphany. And honestly, watching that live, I didn't even think it was that good. But I had this wild epiphany that I'm just like, how come I never thought of this? How come nobody ever thought of this? Okay. Because we believe what we hear, especially when it comes from somebody like a police chief or an authority, a newscaster. So, we've been told at the beginning of this dreadful, dreadful tragedy, at the beginning, we were told that they were all asleep in their beds, right? Okay. So, again, we need to give full respect and leverage to law enforcement to keep things under their hat, hold their cards close to their chest and do their job. So, if somebody said, "Really, I'm pretty sure they were all awake," then you would be like, "Well, let's go talk in the corner." Like, how do you know that, right? So, as things unfold and as time progresses, and here we are again, I didn't count the weeks, but I think we're about 11 weeks from the incident. We find out that some of them might have been awake. We find out that some of them were absolutely awake. So it seems to me the only one that we know for sure that was sleeping is Madison. By the way, Justice, you are doing all right. Your energy seems a bit off today. What? Not like a good or bad. It's just different than usual. It's just because I don't have my hat and I'm so worried about my freaking bangs becoming like solid chunks of wood or doing like the crazy spider web thing. It's so bizarre. Like over here it's like the solid wood, and then over here it's like the spider web. It's the lighting, it's the camera. Lights, camera, action, like I always say. So no, thank you, Steve. I feel fine. Really, I do. Really, really. So yeah, I probably could have some more coffee in me. Reminds me of Schoolhouse Rock. Okay. I'm not sure what you mean, but I love Schoolhouse Rock and School of Rock. Oh my goodness, that's one of my favorite movies. You and your hair. I know. This is why I usually wear hats, you guys. How many times do I have to tell you that you look great? Well, like, look how red my hair looks. My hair is not red, you guys. It's like a, dishwater blonde, but I look like a carrot top with the anyway, we don't care, right? We don't care. It looks fine and the same every day, but I try to mix it up. Anyway, let's get back on track. 5 awake in the house potentially. So we find out that Kaylee fought back. So she was either awake or she became awake. Same with Xana. It sounds like Xana was awake, but maybe she became awake, but it sounds pretty solid like she was awake. Ethan, I think the jury's still out on that one. And then we know for sure that Dylan was awake because she said she was awake and that she opened her door 3 times. We've never heard squat about Bethany. Oh my goodness, you guys, I got to read to you. I went through that 97-page thing again last night, trying to go over it with a fine-tooth comb while I was, trying to bore myself to sleep. Let's see. Where'd my... I wanted to read something to you out of it. Okay, it's right here. No, sorry. One sec. There we go. Is that it? Did it not? Oh, you know what? It's on the computer. I did it on the computer, I think. Yeah. Sorry, I took the screenshot on my laptop, so I'm not going to be able to pull it up. But what it said was that all of the girls, and I'll cite it precisely where it is. It said that the 5 girls and the Ethan, that they all were home at about 2, and that they were all either asleep or at least in their rooms at 4 a.m. or by 4 a.m. So really all they're saying in you know, the official call is that they were all in their rooms at 4 a.m. They're not stating that they were asleep, that they were either asleep or in their rooms at 4 a.m. So I don't know that I've ever heard whether Bethany was awake or asleep, but she's on the first floor. The DoorDash that was delivered around 4, right? I mean, seriously, around 4, that was right outside of the front door, and she was the only one at that point in time that we know of that was on the first floor, allegedly. So we still don't know how the DoorDash food got into the house from the stoop. It could have been Xana, it could have been Bethany, it could have been Dylan, it could have been Kaylee, or really anybody. It could have been anybody. Even Maddie, but we were pretty sure that Maddie was asleep, right? Because of the way that her and Kaylee were found. No way, you always look good. You're so photogenic. Your hair always looks great. Your background's kicking. Let it go and breathe. Well, I have fun with the backgrounds. I know it's a little bit much. I try not to like overdo it, but it's kind of my personality to overdo things, honestly. I'm glad you read all 97 pages because every time I tried, I couldn't focus long enough. I mean, I tried to read it before. Last night I was scanning it since I've read it and I'm familiar with it. Um, but that really struck me, the 4 a.m. thing, and that they were in their rooms at 4 a.m., not necessarily asleep in their rooms. That, a lot of it's an assumption. So my point is that there could have been 5 of them awake. That it could have been that Bethany, Dylan, Xana, Ethan, and Kaylee were all awake. We know that at least 3 of them were awake. We know that Dylan, Kaylee, and Xana were awake. So Dylan and Xana were on the second floor. Allegedly, apparently, they were wide awake or in and out. Maybe Dylan was in and out. It's just getting shakier and shakier, is what I'm saying. Like, it's harder and harder for me to believe that one guy went into a home that he is not familiar with, even if he'd been to a party there, even if he'd been looking at the layout online, which I would imagine that he did. It's hard to imagine that he didn't trip over somebody's shoes or, make noise. Stairs are creaky and, sometimes you drop things, right? Like your sheath or whatever. It's just, what I'm trying to say is I'm finding it less and less credible that one guy went in there with 6 people, 5 of them, which could have been wide awake. One of those being a guy. I said he was 6'2" yesterday, maybe 6'3". I don't know about that for a fact. I've heard different heights for him. So I think the tallest I've heard is 6'2", 6'3". Again, I was looking online last night and I saw something that said 5'11", and I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that's his brother that he's a few inches taller than. So anyway, the internet is annoying, isn't it? Good morning, Michael McAllister. Jem J says, I agree, Bethany is the mystery and maybe she knows nothing, so she's saying nothing. It's hard to give somebody the benefit of the doubt when they're on the premises where 4 people are slaughtered. And I'm telling you, slaughtering 4 people is not something that takes 6 minutes, as the time frame has shrunk to 6 minutes. That was one of the things that I was looking for. So if they're saying that Xana made a comment on a TikTok at 4:12 and that the white car was speeding away at 4:20, you got to have a little bit of time on either side of that as a buffer. That would be 8 minutes without shaving off a little bit of time to like get into the car and start it and stuff like that. So, it's crazy. It's crazy. It would take that long potentially with one, especially one the size of Ethan, or one. Sometimes those smaller people are harder, you guys. I worked inpatient psychiatry, And we sometimes had to do takedowns, and we would have like 5 of us, and we were all trained, and we all knew what we were doing, and we were all organized. And the tiny ones that are like 95 pounds, when they're wiggly, they're way harder than like the big, strong 200-pound dude. I'm not kidding you. So Xana was a little freaking gymnast. She was no pushover, I'm sure. I mean, you can see her personality is explosive. I can't imagine, so she's found on the ground. We were told that they were all asleep in their beds and that they were all found in their beds initially, which was not true. Xana was found on the ground. Ethan, I'm not sure if he was on the bed. It sounds like he was in the back of the room, maybe on the bed. If you guys think speak now or forever hold your peace. I don't think it was one guy no more either. That's why I'm worried about who did his survey that have to be a sick puppy too. I hope that wasn't the reason for the survey. Absolutely, Dilly. Right, because it sounds like he did that survey in the summer when he was not part of DeSales University anymore. Again, if I'm accurate. I don't know that I am, but it sounds like he used that survey online after he got to Washington State, after he got to Pullman and to the university, and that was an old survey, that it wasn't an active survey. But I did get reconfirmed in rereading this 97 pages that he did apply for another internship in fall of 2022. He did apply. So he was one of the top 4 for that assistantship from April last year. He was not selected. It doesn't sound like, anyway. I mean, nothing's for sure. And then he contacted them. He instigated a new contact to try to gain an internship with them. And one of these positions was for 3 years. I don't know if that's the internship or the assistantship. I would think the paid assistantship. My thoughts have always been someone else is involved in some sort. I know, but if you know nothing, best to stay quiet. Are you talking about Bethany or are you talking about me? No, I'm just kidding. I don't think it's best to stay quiet. If you were in Bethany's shoes, I think it would be best to reiterate again and again what your actions were, what you had done that day, what you had done that night, what time you went to sleep, what happened when you woke up in the morning. I mean, you guys, it really sounds like the place was cleaned. It really sounds to me like the place was cleaned. The one latent shoe print that they are saying is, you know, biohazardous human material. We'll just go with that. One shoe print right outside of Bethany's door. And in that 97-page paperwork, or not Bethany, sorry, Dylan, it says, and that footprint is consistent with Dylan's story. It's just like, oh my goodness. So where's all the other footprints? What, there's just one footprint right there to confirm her story? Anyway, I want to share too that I just watched the latest Harsh this morning, and he was talking about the problem with losing track of your Bryans, which is cute. I've thought of that before too, and I didn't want to be insulting to anybody with good Bryans or Brian Enton, but I was just like, yeah, enough with the Bryans. And yeah, why is it that the authorities have so much trouble keeping an eye on these Bryans? Like, are these Bryans just that clever that they just know how to sneak away? Or is there more to it? These Bryans are dangerous. These Bryans that they like weren't paying attention because I don't know if they saw something shiny or if they just didn't have the manpower. If they didn't have the manpower, they need to get the manpower. They need to get outside agencies to work with them. To have an alleged killer slip away from your purview is risky business, to say the least. No fool. Baffles me that Why would law enforcement divulge Dylan actually saw the killer? Isn't it Ellie's duty protect witnesses? By them saying Dylan saw a positively identified BK, law enforcement is placing Dylan's life at risk. Oh my goodness, you are no fool, aren't you? Wow, and I apologize for missing so many of your awesome comments. I want to go back and read them, but I'll do that later because it's just so hard. If I'm reading everybody's comment, I don't get any of my notes, and sometimes that's okay. I don't mind it. I don't know about you guys, but I want to check out. Jody says, I totally agree. People say in Dylan's case, you don't know what you would do. I beg to differ. I know what I'd do. I wouldn't wait 8 hours to call the police. That's for sure. Well, especially you wouldn't be calling your friends. If she hadn't called her friends, I would find it more believable. But calling her sorority sisters, allegedly, the only two people of uh, identities that I think that we know for sure that came over to the house that morning before law enforcement got there were Ethan's triplets, the brother and the sister. So I don't know. So I'm really concerned still about Dylan's relationship to the guy who's the prosecuting attorney. That sounds like it might be her uncle. It sounds like it might be her father's brother. And that guy working with the defense attorney, having, a social relationship or collegial relationship, being familiar with each other. I mean, all of this is just looking sus to me. The defense attorney defending the people who've been busted for drugs, and then defending the person who's accused of killing those previous clients of hers. That's not okay. And like I was saying yesterday, for them to say, well, she's the only person qualified in northern Idaho. So what? You've just said you have a dozen people in other parts of Idaho that are qualified. What's the deal? What's the hang up? So, and Liza says, Sifa, you sent notifications about this live. You forgot me. Oh, you guys are so cool. Let's see. I wanted to highlight this one about Dylan. Yeah, it's not making sense to me. And yeah, that's a really good point that No Fool said too. So not only did they say, yeah, Dylan saw the guy, but then they're like, oh, well, we didn't know where he was for 13 hours on December 13th, I think, until the license plate showed up there in Colorado. So yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy. Um, anyway, let me see where I'm at with let me just throw this in there. Could we make a call for not like a phone call, but just like a YouTube call to ask for, and I know this is controversial, to ask for Upchurch and Creek Squad to get on this case? I feel like that could help shake it up. Crime Circus was shaking it up yesterday with his live that he did. I think he did a 20-minute live, right, at 9 o'clock. That was pretty amazing. So why was nobody else worried about Jack? Why was nobody else worried about Jack's safety? If he was so close to these people and right across the street, you would think that the killer might think that he would need to go after that guy too at a later date, like from November 13th until he wasn't apprehended until December 30th, but the suspect was in town for a month. A month. It just doesn't make sense to me. And the whole thing with all these red flags, and yesterday I said what am I even saying red flag for? These things are flashing neon lights, like the thing with the conflict of interest for the attorney. We shouldn't have to think about that. We shouldn't have to discover that. We shouldn't have to argue that. That's like a given. That is just like basic conflict of interest 101. Seriously, if you play golf with somebody on the weekends occasionally, that's a conflict of interest when you're looking at legal representation. If you go to the same Christmas party once a year, that's a conflict of interest. That's how lawyers do it. This whole thing is completely out of control. Squirrely Burger says all of the police, lawyers, judges work together in a professional capacity every day, which extends to personal capacity in every department. These are how favors are rolled out. I agree 100%, Squirrely Burger. I've been there, done that. Um, Sometimes you can get people that haven't run in the same circles, haven't crossed paths. But yeah, sometimes you have to get people from out of the area, especially when you're working with small towns. And sometimes it's not that critical. Sometimes it's okay to say, well, there's a conflict of interest, but we've disclosed the conflict of interest and we're just going to go with it, right? But this is absolutely crazy freaking critical. Crazy critical. Law enforcement much visual snow because they keep losing Brian's. Pam, I love you. That's a really good one. I have to highlight that. Sorry that I shook the computer with my cup. I'll quit putting it there. Um, and then Liza says, with Brian and his lawyer, his Sixth Amendment right kick in, the law is about procedures. Correct. Absolutely. Liza, the video I didn't notify because it was partly a demo run for another mod. The account info, I think I remember it. Yeah, I'll send it. And if that doesn't work, we'll figure it out. All right. So let me look back at my notes, you guys. There were a couple other things I really wanted to touch on. Yesterday I was talking about those comments from a video the day before. And again, my takeaway with that is that that person brought to my attention that none of us have ever been concerned. Like, oh, what if Jack was there and he got killed too? Like, none of our instincts has ever gone that direction, I don't think, because it's just not very realistic. Like, okay, let's put another person in that situation. It's even less likely that what allegedly happened would happen, especially a guy who can balance an axe on his chin in a filing cabinet or whatever. Right? Goodness. Yeah, the magnitude of this situation and the conflicts of interest is completely, like I said, beyond a flashing red warning light. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. It's absolutely a deal breaker to have that type of, on January 5th, when they assigned Ann Taylor to the criminal defendant's case, she was handling Xana's mother's case actively. Kara. It's a no-brainer. Like, no, you're not going to take that person off of one of the victim's mom's cases, even if she'd only been on that case for that one case. But we know that this is the fourth time that they've worked together. It's not like they didn't know. That's my point. Okay. Let's see. Liza says if there's a conflict of interest, the Idaho bar would be involved by now. They need to follow a book of rules and ethics. Well, nationally, it's a no-brainer. Idaho does their own thing. So I don't know that the Idaho bar would care, honestly, because Idaho totally runs differently than the other states in our country. Yes, that should have just disqualified her from being considered for the job. Should have yeah, that must be like a voice to text. Isn't that frustrating? So yeah, that's hard when you're doing voice to text and then I'm reading it out loud. Yes, that should have just qualified her, which is disqualified, I'm pretty sure, disqualified her from being considered for the job. It's inappropriate. Right. And Squirrely Burger, fix it. Thanks, Squirrely Burger. Yeah, it's beyond inappropriate. It's beyond sloppy. It's absolutely beyond hideous. It's just beyond conceptualization, in my humble opinion. So now Jack is saying that his roommate was calling him back. That's why I didn't answer the phone. Cow poop, elephant poop, they may be different, but they all stink like crap. I don't know. Is Jack saying anything? I mean, I've heard people speculating. Um, so I don't know. Yeah. It is absolutely wrong. So, Phantasmic Ether says if it's not a technical legal issue, somehow it still should be an ethical issue, in my opinion. Well, and it really is not only bad for the families and their betrayal, it's bad for the defendant and it's bad for the case because that could be an argument that the defendant didn't get a fair trial, that this person knew too much about the the victims and their families, had an alliance. Yeah, the whole case stinks. That's my point. That's what I'm trying to get to. This whole case stinks to high heaven. It's really ridiculous, in my opinion, how things are going. And at the same time, I want to give credit where credit's due. Reading through that 97 pages of documentation, I'm like, they worked really hard on this and it looks really legit. When you put stuff black and white, ink on paper, it legitimizes it. And you certainly don't put disinformation or misinformation on paper. You don't. But I've seen it happen. I've seen court documents be falsified. I've seen people not be prosecuted for falsified court documents. So, it's hard when you've seen that in real life to then just take things at face value. So that's my issue. Just because I've seen it in other cases doesn't necessarily mean that that's happening in this case, but it's entirely possible. So, let's see. It affects the level of trust. You know what, Sifa? You just put that so eloquently. Such a simple sentence. So few words. Our whole court system is the foundation of it is good faith. You have to go into court with good faith as a defendant, as the side that's pressing charges. You have to have good faith and you have to demonstrate good faith. Otherwise, the whole thing falls apart. So that simple word, trust, is huge. It's absolutely huge. Oh, why'd you have to say this, Sifa? I'm just kidding. Faith, truth, and honesty. Okay. I'm going to be honest, you guys. Having worked in the courts, I have seen, when I worked in the courts in Seattle, I saw every single person that I worked with, judges, lawyers, everybody, knowingly lie. That was my experience, in my opinion, allegedly. Okay. I would see these people lie. There was one judge, I was going to look her up and see if she's retired yet. When you're a public figure, it's okay for me to say names. Hightower, Bobby Bridge, and then Judge Hightower. So Bobby Bridge is the one that I am trying to talk about. Sorry, I threw Hightower in there because it's such a funny name for a judge, in my opinion. Bobby Bridge was a judge who I saw lie straight up, 100%, just bald face lie. And I was just like a lowly court appointed special advocate supervisor. And, what did I know? I mean, I have no authority over a judge. So, I saw it, and she wasn't the first. I mean, it was everywhere. And then after I didn't work there anymore, there was an incident about a year and a half later where she was drunk driving in Seattle near her home. She ran into a parked car and she tried to do a hit and skip. And a bunch of her neighbors came out and like corralled her car and wouldn't let her drive away. And the police came and busted her and arrested her for drunk driving. And I was not surprised. I was like, okay, now it makes sense why she's a buffoon and she lies at her job. She's an alcoholic. I mean, she was shit faced, pardon the expression. Um, and she did the right thing for anybody who gets themselves into a pickle like that. She did the best thing she could do. I'm like, how is she going to keep her career? She didn't miss a beat. All she had to do was say, "Oh, yes, I'm a huge alcoholic, and now it's been brought to my attention, and I can get treatment. And I'm oh so glad that this all happened so I can improve myself." And, what are you going to do? Nobody's going to do nothing because then it becomes a medical issue and a privacy issue. And she did the right thing. It surprises me that more people in situations like that don't just go with that script. But she was a hot mess. She was a hot mess. Of course, nothing changed. So I don't want to talk about that anymore. It's hateful. Hateful. But my point is that nobody takes the whole like telling the truth in court seriously, not even the people that you would think would be taking it seriously. They will all bend the truth, which is lying, to fit what they want to fit. I've seen it, in my opinion, allegedly across the boards that every single professional that I ever witnessed lied. Every single one of them. So I'm a little jaded. That was Seattle. That was 20, almost 25 years ago. So I'm sure it's all changed now, right? I mean, I was so dismayed. I was in my early 30s and I didn't know. I thought everybody told the truth in court, especially lawyers and judges. I really believed that. I was appalled. I was devastated to see the shortcomings in our system. And I think I shared this with you guys before. I had a lawyer say to me when in a discussion about it, where I said, I just want to see justice. And he said, if you want to see justice, the court system is the last place where you're going to find that. And I was just like, come again? But that's been my experience. It takes me a while just to cut a chicken. I can't wrap my brain around that. Oh my God, Dilly Owens. Yikes. I missed what was said before that, but I can like catch up right there. Wow. A defense attorney is a tool of the state. Yes, she is moved as is need be. Legally is not an issue unless Taylor does something wrong. Liza, you smart. Have you worked in this court system yourself? Absolutely, a defense attorney is a tool of the state. It's called the long arm of the law. This is why you want a private attorney if you can afford it, but it's expensive. It's like $250 an hour these days, probably for most attorneys. And, if you're in New York or LA, it's probably 500 or more per hour. I don't even know. But it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And they usually charge by the 10th of an hour. So every 6 minutes. And if they're reading your email, they charge you for that. If they're calling you and leaving a message, of course, they're going to charge you for that. Because planting seeds of doubt is what the defendant needs to walk. Right. And that has concerned me for a long time from the outset of the defendant being arrested. I certainly don't want to be contributing to any seeds of doubt in letting a defendant walk. And I mean, that's atrocious. But my concern is that there's people that are not arrested that probably need to be. That's my concern. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm saying that seems so unrealistic excuse me, so unrealistic to me that he did this all by his big old self. Yes, it's disgusting because dishonesty and deceit isn't what the country was claimed to have been built on, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. Hello from Colorado. Hey, DDK. My ex and his wife falsifies evidence in court and committed major perjury in court, caused a decade of hell for myself and my son when I tried getting a RQ restraining order, is that to protect my son from wow. Hey, Rhonda R. Good morning. Then I was laughed at. Phantasmic Ether, I am so sorry. Again, in my experience, the whole court system is very sexist too. If you're a white male with a deep voice, you have authority and you're credible. And if you're a woman, you're emotional and can't be trusted. In my experience, allegedly. Yes, it's gotten much worse. Phantasmic Ether, nothing surprises me, and I'm sorry that happened to you. And Zifa says, what a shame that so many people died throughout history just to have justice in the courts and the freedom and rights to have it be a just ruling. What was the sacrifice really worth now? You know what, Sifa? I mean, my family is military and has put their lives on the line for those freedoms of our country. I really believe in the freedoms of our country, even with the crookedness of some of it. Again, I'm not well traveled. I don't know the ins and outs of how other countries are ran, but from what I hear, our system is one of the better systems. So the fact that we can even question our authority is a lot more than many countries. So, freedom of speech is huge. And being able to criticize your government is not something that I take for granted. And I honestly don't enjoy criticizing government entities. That's not my thing. But my thing is, truth and justice. So if I feel like there's something in the way, I'm going to call it out, whatever it is, whoever it is. And then I'm not going to care if they're a court employee like a lawyer or a judge or a bailiff or whatever. If they're being dishonest, if they are abusing their power, they need to be called out. That's what needs to stop, in my humble opinion. Billable hours, hoping for answers says, and they will bill you for every piece of paper. They'll count all the copies. You know how they'll have like 1,000 pages or 10,000 pages. Every single one of those is going to cost you money. And yeah, they use a lot of paper. They'll also charge you for copying stuff, of course, because they have to pay their employees that do that. And they'll charge you for postage, of course, because, yeah, you get to pay for everything. None of it's covered in the $500 an hour or the $250 an hour. You'd think it might come with free stamps, but no, of course not. So, well, lying. Let's start with the FBI. Nobody has explained the 40 agents. Liza, thank you. And when the FBI comes out and says that they lied about things like with JFK, that was just recent where they came clean on some giant untruths. How are we supposed to keep trusting them when that was what, over 55 years ago, and we're finally getting the truth from the authorities? Oh, okay, but we're supposed to believe you today, whatever you say. Again, we had FBI agents, 55 of them allegedly, standing on the shores of Prosser Creek Reserve with Kylie's car allegedly 55 feet away and under 14 feet of water to the bottom, meaning that the car was like about half that, and her remains in there, and that dogs couldn't smell that. That's absolute crap. So I'm still unclear about the dog thing. If anybody knows if there was actually I mean, I don't know why they would obviously not have cadaver dogs be going in there, but drug sniffing dogs going in to the residence of 1122 King Road, sorry. I wish we had this kind of constitution back in my home country. It's sad that people are trying to break it apart here with all of this political corruption, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I still believe in our country. I just believe that we need to clean up the parts that aren't, um, you know, the parts that are corrupt need to be cleaned up. Hello, Mrs. Amir Zaza. It's the same back home, and if you don't live the right lifestyle, you risk being killed depending on which part of the country you're in. But you'll definitely get locked up for life. Are you from India, or what country are you from, Sifa, if you don't mind sharing? Um, Became a replay crew, uh, do days, do load shedding power outage. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know it kind of cracks me up when there's a power outage because in my family we love it. We all like to pretend that we're Amish for a day or a few hours, whatever it is. But it is amazing how dependent we are on electricity. And then to think that there's plenty of people in this world that live without it, right? Absolutely. Lawyers on billable hours are like hospitals. One Q-tip is 350. I haven't seen the $3.50 for Q-tip, but it reminds me of like the $100,000 toilet seats that the military was paying for. Awesome. Thanks, Sifa. Sorry, I'm doing it again. Egypt. There we go. Sifa. Um, and yeah, I do have Eastern Indian in me as well, though, but I'm from Egypt. Interesting to know because, yeah, I mean, I've never been to Egypt. I have a friend who lived in Cairo for a long time, and she hasn't really shared that kind of stuff with me. So, very interesting. Well, you guys, let's wind it down and wrap it up because we are already at 52 minutes, and I'm trying to keep these a little bit shorter. I'm trying to like skinny them down a little bit so that they just take up less time for people watching. I enjoy so much talking with you guys. I could probably go on all day, but what I will do is take a break for a few hours and then come back on at 1 o'clock. If that sounds good, I'll put up a thing, an alert for 1 o'clock. Let's see. Let's read a few more of these. No Fool says Steve Gonsalves is very vocal. Wouldn't he have already said something regards conflict of interest if he knew it to be a problem? I don't know that he would. I mean, he's gotten a lot of pushback for being vocal. He's gotten pretty battered and abused, and he doesn't want to undermine his relationship with the authorities. So it's a very, very good question, No Fool. Annie Ruler says, my attorney would tell me the same jokes and charge me the time. I believe you, Annie Ruler. If I hadn't had the real life experience that I had, I'd be like, what are you talking about? That could never happen. Annie, your attorney would tell you the same jokes and charge you for it? Of course. Of course. Oh my goodness. So you guys on that, yeah, let's reconvene this afternoon. I'll have more coffee in me by then, and I'm just blown away. I can totally see it. The lawyer telling you the same jokes and then charging you for that time. That is crazy. That's crazy. I wanted to ask you, Annie Ruler, being that your husband worked for the King County Superior Court, I think you said, does he remember the thing with Bobby Brooks? If you caught that part about Judge Bobby Brooks getting arrested for drunk driving, I want to say that was probably about um, 2001, give or take. I could look it up and see if it's Googleable. They probably scrubbed it, right? Anyway, I'm going to say peace out, you guys. Have a lovely rest of your morning. It's just about 9:30. And I will see you at 1 o'clock. I'll try to be on the nose, Johnny on the spot, and make sure you get your exercise and your fresh air and sunshine if you can. Stay hydrated and well nourished. Protein, vegetables, fruit, produce. We all know that. And being kind to yourself, being kind to other people, I think is one of the most important things that we can do each day. And just being easy on ourselves and forgive ourselves for our shortcomings, making amends to others and with ourselves is so huge. Anyone who's been through the 12-step program knows that that's like the most powerful of all the 12 steps for most people. Of course, some people that might be different, but it's very freeing to apologize to people and to ask for forgiveness and to forgive yourself because we've all done things that we're ashamed of, I'm sure. That's just part of life. And so, you guys, peace out. Have a lovely rest of your morning and enjoy your Wednesday. And I hope to see you again this afternoon. Be well, and thanks for coming. See you then.